everyone, and welcome back to episode number 3 of the Gypsy Spliffs podcast. I'm really excited to share with you my discussion today with Amy Holland, plant medicine advocate and creator of Tea for the Temple. Amy shares with us how a plant medicine journey changed the trajectory of her life, which resulted in her leaving a very secure, well-paying job that was causing her a great deal of stress, anxiety, and depression, and choosing the road less traveled and taking a leap of faith where she creates her own business centered around designing teas that heal and bespoke blends for her clients. If you like episodes like this, please click like and subscribe. And if you know anyone that could benefit from this message, please feel free to share as well. I really hope you enjoy. Just really want to say thank you so much, Amy, for meeting me here and taking the time. I just want to share with our audience how we met on basically a foraging girls trip in Vermeer, British Columbia, and learned so much, not only about you and the women that were on this trip, but we learned so much about the plants that are within our everyday environment, and then got to learn a lot more about what you're studying and the things that you're creating with your brand and the medicinal properties of tea and the supplements that you're making. So yeah, would you mind sharing your story of how you fell in love with plants and their medicinal properties?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited and happy to be here to share my story. I think the first time I discovered herbal medicine and what herbs and plants can do for our bodies is I purchased a herb book, and I was reading it one night, and I read this one part that really spoke to me or stood out to me was how there's certain types of herbs that we can take during our cycle as females, and how these different herbs can help us with any sort of symptoms that we're having. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And then I just didn't really think anything of it. I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. Like maybe I'll dabble into that a little more someday. And at that time I was working in a different career, and I was working in an office environment, very high pace, very, very dog eat dog sort of world, long hours, like 12 to 14-hour days, and extremely stressful as well. Huge projects that were millions of dollars and tight deadlines. And during that time, I was extremely stressed out. I drank a lot as well. I would drink pretty much every day, and I was on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, a type of SSRI for anxiety, stress. The reason why I was on those was for my career, for one, it was high stress. I just, even stresses of life, and growing up, I also suffered, and I still do, with childhood trauma. I went through some abuse, and also, I'm trying to think of the word right now.
We'll come back if it comes up.
Okay. Abandonment issues, childhood trauma, childhood abuse. And so it was a whole bunch of things that were coming at me, and my body could physically no longer handle it. So I started taking antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication. They weren't taking away the problem. I had gone to therapists and psychologists in the past. I had been going to them on and off for years, and it was either the options were to practice certain practices to help me work through any sort of trauma or any sort of trigger. And those practices I found were not working specifically to me. Maybe they worked for other people, and that's why so many therapists were recommending these practices, or therapists would think that I didn't really need a whole lot of work, or I didn't really need a whole lot of help, or they wanted to prescribe me drugs. And for the longest time, I was not doing the drugs until it started to physically ail me. It get to the point where I couldn't get out of bed, and I could just feel it like just heavy in my body, and I didn't know how to handle it. So I started taking the SSRIs, and the SSRIs were not getting rid of the problem. The problem was still very much there. I was also drinking heavily. And I came across plant medicine. I came across an opportunity to try plant medicine. And at the time, I was very open to it because I knew that what was going on in my life at that time, it wasn't working. And the moment that I tried this plant medicine, I set my intentions with the plant medicine to heal. And my connection with this plant medicine was deeper than any sort of connection that I had received through therapy or psychologists, through the synthetic pharmaceutical SSRIs. And I was blown away by how healing this plant medicine was. And it changed my world around. It changed my world around completely. I used it some more, and I kept receiving a lot of guidance and messages from it to go deep into my subconscious, to really connect and really to sit with what happened with my trauma, face it, and understand that what happened wasn't okay, but there's still so many other beautiful things in this world to explore, to learn. And that definitely there's some other options that could save a lot of other human beings as well, that might be going through the same trauma, or it wouldn't be the same, but I mean, similar sort of situations. And so it all started with me asking myself a question, and I was thinking, well, if plants work, then why aren't we using them? So I started looking into our cell biology. I looked further into epigenetics as well. Bruce Lipton, I read his book. He's a really great writer and doctor, scientist. He discovered epigenetics and how it's not just, a physical, it's also the environment that we put ourselves in, our cells, that meaning energy, even food, anything that we put into our body. So I've always been super infatuated with what we can do with our bodies too. If we want to gain a little bit of more muscle, then we can eat this or put this into our body. If we want to lose some more fat, then we can do this. And it's amazing what we can actually do with our bodies and achieve with them. So I've always been infatuated with that too. But what really got me was the plants. And so I started studying cell biology a little bit, just on my own, and a little bit of quantum as well, because I knew that after I connected with the plant medicine, it was like, okay, well, there's something happening in this world, in this universe, that is not just physical here. You know, we've been so taught to, or conditioned to, focus on the physical, you know. And so I started studying a little bit of quantum just for myself, nothing crazy. Mm-hmm. And then I was looking into maybe going into nutrition. And then I decided I'm just going to go and work with the plants.
That story, wow, thank you so much for sharing that, Amy. And just getting to hear you say it all kind of in that timeline and your experiences. There's a lot that I really relate to. I think our experience with our introductions with plant medicine sounds very similar. For me, it felt like a very strong connection to self and kind of exploring that, a connection, back home to myself. And I think I was guided that way based on same sort of situations, having realized that I'd experienced significant trauma at a very young age. And I think carried that around for the majority of my adult life, and just thought that was normal, thought all of my symptoms was normal, thought the depression was normal, thought the insomnia, anxiety was normal. And it was only when I actually got to see it on paper, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis and was prescribed pharmaceutical medications. And from my experience, based on my mom's past, we had pharmaceuticals in our house all the time. And I think I had a little voice that called to me to say, I don't want to have to go to Shoppers Drug Mart, every other week for a prescription. I don't want those clear orange bottles that I remember so vividly on my mother's nightstand, and so many of them. I don't want that. And there was like this rattling of this cage, and my soul was rattling, saying, go another direction. And it was through basically applying plant medicines. At that time, ashwagandha was a big one, holy basil. Those were the ones that I got prescribed by my naturopath, in addition to some lifestyle changes as well. But it was on paper where I could see I got diagnosed with one thing, and within 6 weeks, when I got my blood tested again, it was back into a normal range. And although they said, we'll keep an eye on it, I've never had my thyroid go to that high a level again that I was prescribed those drugs. So that was a big eye opener for me, that I was like, wow, this woo-woo stuff, it worked. It worked for me. And then the more people I meet and that keep coming into my life seem to have similar stories, where there was a plant or herb, and in conjunction with these lifestyle changes. And I know I follow you on Instagram, and another thing I love watching and checking out what you're doing is your practices, your daily practices, and the intention you bring to so much of what you do, from your thoughts to your movement to your water to how you raise your son, like just so much intention. So yeah, and then learning about the tea that you've created through your own education, which by the sounds of it, you went pretty deep down the rabbit hole and learning about all of these plants and what they could do. And I remember when you gifted me that bag of your tea, which is exquisite, by the way. My new thing is now I'm not gifting bottles of wine anymore. I'm gifting, these medicinal teas to people when I go for, parties or any sort of gift. I'm going to start gifting those because I think they're just exquisite. But just knowing you and the energy and intention you put into it, that even just added to the experience to me the energy that I know and the love that you would have put into that tea and crafting those. So that was just like such a high vibrational tea. And I've tried to make a ritual around that in my evening where I have some of your tea, and it's just extraordinary. Would you mind kind of sharing with us, like, I keep talking about the tea you created because I'm so excited about it, but yeah, through your journey, through your education and through your struggles, that I think something so beautiful came out, which was the creation that you made. Could you share that with us?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So once I decided to work with the plants, then I decided I'm going to start with tea. That's where I'm going to start to share the healing properties and medicinal values, and just get it out there, because tea is pretty mainstream. There's a lot of people that enjoy drinking tea. It's simple, it's calming, it's nice. It is a ritual for some people. And so that's where it started, was tea. I'm going to put the medicinal plants in tea. And so I came up with the name Tea for the Temple, because our body is a temple, and we honor it, we take care of it, we love it. It protects us, it holds us. And it's important that we keep it safe, we keep it loved, we keep it balanced and harmonized. And I also forgot to mention that I did stop drinking alcohol as well. Once I connected with that plant medicine, I was definitely using alcohol as a numbing factor. And it didn't help with my depression, anxiety at all as well. For myself, I don't see any sort of health benefits with consuming alcohol. So I've decided to be sober, and I've been sober since October 29th, 2019. That's the date that I know of. I think it was before, but I went to a Halloween party and decided to not drink. And then after that, I was like, I'm just not going to drink ever. And, but with my teas, so I basically figured out how to blend the herbs together and also make them taste pretty good. I put the blends that work well with the different flavors in a tea, and any sort of herbs that are a little more earthy, I put them in capsules, just for my own experience. But now I'm also learning, like, as I discuss my teas more with other individuals, there are some people that do like the earthy flavors. So I'm working on mixing up a few earthy flavors. Somebody even mentioned a leathery taste to me once. So yeah, that's another flavor that I'm working on as well. Right now, I've got my Take It Easy blend, and that one I really incorporated a lot of calming herbs, because I know that the world can be extremely stressful. Certain life events or situations can be extremely stressful. From myself, I learned what herbs to work with in order to help me with any sort of stresses, anxieties, help me to really calm down. I still take these herbs daily as tools, not every day. I'll take them, and then I'll be feeling great. And then sometimes when I feel like I'm good, then I stop taking them, and then a few days or something will happen, or I just notice that I'm just not, like, I'm not in a good space. Then I realize, oh, I think I need to make myself a tea. And so in this Take It Easy blend, I put, I've actually got it with me right here. This is the Take It Easy blend.
Love it. I love your label too with the pictures of all the herbs on it. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I created all the herbs. I've created the little drawings in here with all the herbs on the packaging. And then here's the back as well. It's got a little write-up about what the herbs do and what herbs are in there as well. My favorite herbs to work with right now are, so I love blue lotus flower. It's very calming. Blue lotus flower, you can even smoke it, and it gives you kind of like a calming body feeling as well.
No, I love that because I've read and heard about a lot of herbs that have medicinal properties too when you blend them, and you can inhale them, smoke them, steam them and inhale them. There's so many different ways. Is that one that I'm assuming when I hear lotus flower, it's not indigenous to Canada, correct? Yeah. But that's one I'll definitely look out for. I haven't had or tried that one before. And that's supposed to have a really calming, soothing effect on the nervous system. Oh, I think we lost you with the sound. Oh, yeah.
Oh, weird. I didn't do anything.
There, I can hear you now. And then what are some of the other ones, like the calming ones and the ones in your Take It Easy blend that you're really liking?
I really like the St. John's wort.
Mm-hmm.
St. John's wort is it's known to treat depression and anxiety. So even if I've got another blend and it doesn't have the St. John's wort in it, or if sometimes I'll put it even in my coffee press with coffee. I'll just put some St. John's wort in there, and that helps. So that's another one of my favorites. It's hard to pick just a few herbs as a favorite because they all have so many amazing benefits. Skullcap is in there. It's really good. It's known to calm a chattery mind. So it's like it slows things down. It really calms you down. And nettle leaf is in there. It's known as a multivitamin because it's got so many vitamins and minerals in there. It's also a good cleanser. And what else is in there?
I can think of so many people running through my head. Well, and that's kind of why I wanted to interview you, that could benefit from everything you've just said.
But it's got ginger in there as well. And ginger is an anti-inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what the plants, like the one plant can do so many different things for our bodies. The plants are closer to our bodies biologically than any sort of synthetic, lab made option.
I totally agree. And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on this, but I do feel like I'd love to get your quick take on why do you think that this is not common knowledge, especially when we went foraging in Vermeer, and I've started foraging around myself personally since. And for instance, one of the things that was so shocking and also really exciting is learning about yarrow. And I'm sure it has so many medicinal benefits to it. But one of the things we had learned is that it's a blood pressure homodulator. So if you have high blood pressure, it will bring it to homeostasis. Same as if you have low blood pressure, it'll bring it to a healthier homeostasis. So when I learned that, and I thought about the list of people I know on blood pressure medication, just that one thing alone, and also knowing the side effects of these medications, they don't come without side effects. They all have side effects. And I've never learned this in school. You don't hear this in a doctor's office. Obviously, you don't really hear this anywhere. And so I'm just curious on, why do you think this knowledge is not known by a lot of people? And do you think we are coming into a resurgence and appreciation for this knowledge now in the times that we're going through?
Yeah, Western medicine, mainstream medicine, it's been around mostly the pharmaceuticals, the synthetic drugs. This is where I researched back in time in history. That's why, it all started with the question, if plants work, why aren't we using them? So I did do a little research and found out when the natural medicine started to kind of be, I don't know what to say and how to say this really. The natural medicine it started to get underplayed, I think, in a sense, because individuals found that when they extracted the active chemical from the plant and they put that into a lab and synthesized it and made a drug from that, they could patent that and make a lot of money out of that. And so once that was discovered, natural medicine started to kind of fall behind due to the fact that natural medicine didn't have a whole bunch of money coming in order for them to get a leg up in the industry, whereas the synthetic medicines, they started to bring in a lot more money, and then they started to have a leg up in the industries. Then they started funding hospitals, because at the time, and I believe hospitals still need funding. Right. And so based on the funding that the hospitals received, they would have to follow the policies and procedures that those people that were funding the hospitals put in place. That was an agreement that they had. So if you just, put two and two together, you realize, okay, the hospitals are following what they want to be prescribed to their patients based on the people that are funding those hospitals. Same goes for the universities, right? You can choose to go to a plant medicine college, or you can choose to go to a big pharma college. And so there's a lot of universities that received funding from these individuals to teach these certain practices and prescribe these certain medications for them. And, sometimes maybe that works for some people and they continue to go on that path. But there's a lot of people that are discovering that is causing imbalances in their bodies. With natural medicine, with plants, they're biologically closer to our bodies. They don't suppress proteins. They don't bulldoze, the synthetic medicines. If there's a problem, they'll be bulldozing a lot of other important cells in our body as well. And our proteins in our bodies are so complex, and they rely on different proteins in order to function. So if a protein in our body is being suppressed by a synthetic medication, and this other protein is trying to communicate to that protein, it's going to cause an imbalance in the body. It's not, with those medications, sometimes they just focus on the problem, and the problem could be, in our feet or on our face, but the actual source of the problem could be in one of our major organs as well. And with plants, they balance everything out, You know, they don't really, if you're using the plants with reverence and with accurate, you know, dosage, then, and it takes time as well. It's not going to be, for some people, it might be a quick fix. It just depends on how deep the problem is and how deep the issue is as well. And how the problem started. If the problem started with a lot of synthetic medications and that person is so sick, I mean, and it's a touchy subject too, right? Because it's
Certainly.
it's you know, I don't want to say that synthetic medicines are bad and tell the world not to do that. And I feel like they're, for me personally, I feel like if it would be amazing for all of the different practices around the world if we could all come together and work together and explore together in order to actually heal people and to actually, you know, balance everyone out. And if the intention is to actually save people and heal people, yes. If the intentions are all about money, making the next patent, then why are you in a business to heal and to save? You know, if it's fueled by greed and money and not by healing, I don't know, it just,
there's definitely a disconnect for sure. And I agree with you that there does seem to be a concerted effort, especially in our history, in our past, to during this time of for-profit medicine. And like you said, I know this is a touchy subject, and by no way do I want to demonize Western medicine. I've said many times, if I'm in a car accident or have an acute issue, that is the place to go. Western medicine is by far superior. But in terms of chronic illness, mental illness, and I think a lot of it is like an emotional or a disconnect from ourselves, then we have all of these other ancient practices, ancient techniques that are thousands of years old. Ayurveda medicine from India, traditional Chinese medicine, these things all focus on root causes. And my experience in the Western medical model in terms of chronic illness never really addresses the root cause. It only addresses the symptom. So if you're continually addressing these surface symptoms and you never get to the root of why the symptom exists in the first place, it just seems like this whack-a-mole where you're like, try this medication. No, that didn't work. Now try this medication. And it's like this spiral in this cycle. And once you're in this model, it seems really hard to get out of it. And I have friends, sadly, I have so many friends who are in this model, and all I want for them is well-being. All I want for them is to feel well, to not feel tired, to not have brain fog, to feel happy in their own bodies. And I do get a little fired up and emotional about it because I feel like the system's failing people and we're not really working together, like you so beautifully said. Like that would be, I think, the most ideal situation. And we do see that many of the doctors, the conventional MDs and osteopaths that I follow, and I follow their work. And you mentioned Dr. Bruce Lipton is another great doctor who does extraordinary work. They come back to these ancient practices and they don't seem to be so close-minded into one avenue, where if you can present them data and evidence and possibility for well-being of their patients, they're all over it. They want to look at it, you know? So for me, that's where I've been kind of gravitating towards, is any doctors or people in the medical field that are opening up to these traditional practices, using plant medicine. I recently just listened to this excellent interview with Dr. Sherry Tenpenny and David Avocado Wolf, who are two people, you know, from very different spectrums of the healing field. You know, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny is osteopath, whereas David Avocado, I mean, he has a laundry list of everything from nutrition to plant medicines, herbal medicines. He's a farmer, all this stuff, but they come together and they both have the same goal, which is happy, healthy humans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what a lot of people go to school to be a doctor want to do, you know, but if you're also, you got to think about the education and what they're being taught as well. And if we could just open up and just collaborate around the world, I mean, we've got the means to communicate now, you know. And what if we put all of these techniques together, you know, and what would we achieve?
Yeah, instead of amazing, I think amazing results, because there's certainly a part, like I remember listening to Paul Stamets, and I won't stay on this point too long, but I think it's worth noting. Paul Stamets, he's a creator of Host Defense, which is medicinal mushroom tinctures and powders and whatnot. But he shared his story of how he married turkey tail mushroom, and I don't remember the pharmaceutical drug, but it was a pharmaceutical drug. It was an older drug. It wasn't a new patented drug, but it was an older drug. And he put these two together, or the doctors did, and used them synergetically. And his mother was able, she had progressive, I think it was a breast cancer and cancer in her lymph nodes as well. And through this protocol was able to heal that. So I think there's so many opportunities for collaboration, and definitely there's synergies here to be gained. And again, this is kind of why I want to have these discussions. I think just to empower people and to give them a little bit of a broader lens that, check this out, consider this. And basically another reason why I wanted to chat with you as well, or I knew I had to chat with you, is just after our trip we came back from, and a girlfriend calls me and tells me, oh, I just got diagnosed with high blood pressure. And I was like, well, I got the girl for you. She makes these teas. She knows so much about herbs. Get in touch with her. She'll do a consult. You guys can talk about a blend that will work for what your symptoms and what your root cause issues are right now. So then perhaps you don't have to take this medication. And wouldn't that be so liberating to not be dependent on something, and to actually, like, for instance, yarrow, I've been finding it everywhere. I go on hikes. So how liberating is that the thing that we need is in plants and food, that we can literally go for a nice, calm, soothing, relaxing hike and pick these herbs and be able to discern which ones we want and how to prepare them. So, well, I guess that kind of segues into what I wanted to talk about, is essentially, if people do want to find you and want to consult with you, Amy, regarding creating blends, creating capsules for them, are you taking clients for this type of work, or can they get in touch with you? And if they can, where?
They can get in touch with me through my Instagram account. It's Tea for the Temple, and it's the number 4, not the word 4, Tea for the Temple.
Okay.
And also my website is teaforthetemple.ca. And my email right now, I just have a Gmail account. It's teaforthetemple@gmail.com. And it also has to play, lifestyle has a huge part as well in our health, right? It's so important that we pay attention to the foods that we're putting into our bodies. If we're filling our bodies full of preservatives and chemicals, you're definitely going to cause some damage for sure. And even large amounts of alcohol consumption. And, it's so important to even pay. It could even just be something so simple as changing the foods that you eat, maybe purchasing more organic foods and less preservatives and fresh whole foods,
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think that's the one thing you had touched on a few times about paying attention to ourselves and being able to discern when we need something and when we don't, and when we're eating something and it's not agreeing with us, and then starting to really tap into what makes us feel good and what doesn't, not necessarily what makes us feel good for, the 5 minutes that we're eating something, but something that actually makes us feel good in our bodies, that gives us energy, that doesn't leave us feeling lethargic or drained. If we can listen to our bodies, and then, like you're saying, start paying attention to what are the products that we're bringing into our homes, what's on these labels. And I know this seems daunting, and it's not my intention to overwhelm anyone, but like you said, that bringing up this is our temple. We only have one body, and I think we should be really selective about the products that we put on it and in it and in our environment. And so that's, again, another thing with these conversations, and I'm really glad you brought that up, is bringing this awareness and this intention and consciousness around what we're eating, what we're buying, and starting to actually look in nature. I love you how you use the word infatuated. I've become infatuated with this new field of study for me, which is foraging and plant medicines. And I've been finding reishi mushrooms everywhere I go now. I pick yarrow. My sister has slightly low blood pressure, and my blood pressure's always been slightly low as well. So I go to her house in Sundry. I go out in her yard and I pick her a pile of yarrow. I'm like, okay, boil this in some water, make a tea with this, and then keep referring people to you, so that they can get a consultation and a full assessment of what they can do, and then some of the teas that you can design specially for them. So I'll put all the links to where people can find you and order your tea. I've loved your tea so very much. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to be bringing that for gifts for people from now on. That's so beautiful. So thank you so much, Amy. And yeah, this was such a beautiful chat, and I'm so grateful to have people like you in my community. So for all my friends and family, get in touch with Amy. She is a wealth of knowledge. I feel like we've just scratched the surface here. There's so much.
I definitely want to talk more, but
if there's anything else, I didn't want to cut this too short, but I know we could probably chat a little bit more. And then if there's anything else you would like to add, though, by all means.
Yeah, just to go back with what we're putting into our bodies physically, and then also what we are receiving and what we are saying to ourselves, the environment that we're putting ourselves into, like our subconscious thoughts or what are we saying to ourselves? What are we thinking to ourselves? That's very important as well. What sort of environment are we putting, what are we holding for our physical bodies based on our subconscious minds, based on our emotions? And of course, emotions, they'll come and go, but how are we working through these emotions? How are we handling them? Are we just looking to numb them, or are we actually sitting with them and feeling that uncomfortable feeling and honoring all of these emotions that come as well? It's so important to do that as well. I feel like that's another conditioning, systematic conditioning, that we've been raised to not feel a certain way because that's a burden on somebody else. Instead, of honoring our emotions and communicating and sharing our emotions, you know, and not being shamed from that for them, and being respected and holding space for them. It's so important as well. That's another important practice to bring into our lives every day. Just pay attention to what's going on up in there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you loving yourself? All of you.
And, you know, we talk about detox and but you're absolutely right. As much as cleaning up our environment, cleaning up what's in our food, being an observer of our thoughts and just witnessing them, not getting attached to them. And I think too, there's like definitely a gap in our culture that probably there wasn't in ancient cultures, where emotions were, there was some kind of practice around talking about them or honoring them and then dissipating them and letting them go. In our world, we're just taught to suppress them, like little boys don't cry, and you know, for women to kind of this condition of playing small and not speaking your truth and not saying what's on your mind. I think that can be the root of a lot of disease too, where we suppress these emotions. And I mean, we live in a time right now where addiction is ballooning. And I think at the root of that is trauma. And what's at the root of trauma is these dysfunctional relationships with our emotions, and not being able to actually face our child selves and face those parts of ourselves that maybe didn't fit the mold when we were growing up. And so we abandoned them, and they've never gotten the love or connection, that the longing that they've wanted, because we've just kept suppressing them. And I think that when we talk about a lot of the health problems right now, from stress, emotions, addictions, really comes back to these unfulfilled longings for connection that we had as a child. And this is a lot of the work that I've been in the last little while to really studying and trying to practice as well. So I've learned a lot from you, and just getting to learn your kind of the mental practices and the emotional practices that you have for not attaching to these outcomes, not attaching to our emotions. They're not us.
Absolutely. Really practicing mindfulness, you know, getting to know mindfulness. And there was actually this YouTube thing that I came across. It was John Kabat-Zinn, The Healing Power of Mindfulness. And he's the one that, watching him speak to this college, he really like dove into it. It wasn't just like the surface of mindfulness, you know, be present, mindfulness. It was more like not, and it's also, it was kind of like a frequent message that I was getting as well. I asked to receive sort of guidance, and then I received them over multiple different sort of messages and events and situations. A friend of mine sent another mindfulness to me this morning. Well, not this morning, but it was that week that I received these different mindfulness practices from different sources. And yeah, just not attaching any sort of opinions or judgment onto a past situation, you know, that happened, and just attached to that, how it played out in your mind, and making that your new day. You know, it's happened, and and your opinion or judgment is extremely subjective as well, because who knows if that's right or wrong, if you know.
I've heard a quote from Dr. Gabor Mate, and he says, "We see the world how we are, not how it is." I think it's something like that. We see the world how we are, not how the world really is. And I think that really fits in with what you were saying.
Yeah. And it's also another good book is The Fifth Agreement. That's also mentioned in this book as well, that, you know, anybody could picture this rock and say that it's a bad rock or an ugly rock because it's this color, because they don't like black and they think, oh, automatically it's black, it's got to be dark and evil, that's an evil rock, we better destroy that rock before it hurts somebody and harms someone. That's not truth. That's an opinion, that's a judgment based on, you know, another opinion, another judgment that that individual received as a child, as a conditioning, based on, you know, what that individual, that parent or that teacher received and passed along. So, and then the same thing with looking into the future, attaching to the future. Okay, well, today I'm gonna go here, meet this person, and this is what it's gonna be like, or this is what I expect to happen. You know, instead of just focusing, just like letting go of all of that, just let it all go. Stop, like release the attachment and just be present and not have any sort of opinion or judgment. Try to not even, you know, I don't know, you could go so far with it, because you could even just try to not to have a name for an object or something, you know, because if you really want to go deep into that, that's subjective as well.
Human constructs, and as are my opinions and my thoughts and my judgments. And that was something, especially since our last chat, I've been trying to really practice is I'll witness things and then realize that this isn't reality. This is your lens, Melissa. It's not everybody else's, and it may not be reality. So don't get too attached and try to come back to the present, because I find when we haul the past, try to keep hauling the past into the present, or we're jumping ahead into the future, that's where I think we as a society start struggling with depression and anxiety. I think not having these practices and tools and techniques really being something that is a part of health and wellness in general and in a conventional way, I think is really at the root of a lot of what's ailing us right now, is because we're everywhere, but we're not here. We're not in the now. We're everywhere else.
Yeah, it's a practice, and it's work to continue to like check yourself and keep practicing mindfulness as well. You know, it's work. It's not a pill that's going to take that away, maybe temporarily, where you can't even do anything and you'll just sleep or something, you know, but it's work and it's practice, it's habits that.
Yes. And I think that's definitely a message that I'd like to leave people with, is that coming back to ourselves and being connected to ourselves, it's not easy. It is a lot of work, but I feel like the alternative makes it worth it. The alternative of feeling disconnected from myself or feeling numb and not really feeling or dealing with what's going on with me. That I think is a very empowering thing, when we can feel and find the strength within ourselves to say, yeah, this is really hard, and looking at this is really uncomfortable. I feel so uncomfortable, and all of the shame that comes up. I remember something I read in one of Brene Brown's book is shame can't exist when we shine a light on it. It can only exist in the dark. But we have to sit with these parts of ourselves, right? And we have to shine a light on these parts of ourselves that we feel so uncomfortable with, and try to work through that. And as I'm saying this, I know it can bring up nervousness. It can bring up a lot of physiological issues. Are there herbs or teas that you would recommend that are particularly useful in times where we're sitting in these uncomfortable spots, or we're in those dark night of the soul moments? where we're really letting go of what's not serving us, whether that's people, jobs, old ways of looking at things. Are there any things from a herbal plant medicine perspective that can aid people through going through this hard time and help them get through to the lighter side of things?
For those, I prefer to use a lot more herbs that are connected to our heart chakra, really. Just more like heart openers. Rose petals, those are really good heart openers. Even reishi mushroom is a good heart opener as well. And then St. John's wort, it's awesome for depression, for anxiety. Blue lotus again is very good for anxiety. It's nice and calming. Passion flower is really good for anxiety. But again, like I love to make custom blends for any of my clients. Like I just recently did a custom blend for a client of mine, and it just happened, it just happened by just having a conversation with her and asking how she was doing and what was going on in her life. And she felt safe and opened up to me and explained that she didn't feel like herself. And then we just connected and talking as, female to female. And I said, sometimes I feel that way right before my cycle. And it just happened to be that she was approaching her cycle as well. And I said, well, Damiana helps with this. And so does donkey. I believe it's pronounced donkey. I like to say donkey, but
Chinese herb, right?
Yeah, donkey. It's really good for PMS symptoms. And so yeah, she just said, but can you make me a tea for that? And I'm like, absolutely, I'd love to. She's like, well, if it's not a problem, like, it's not a problem at all. This is my creation. This is what I love to do. And she had the tea, and she contacted me after, like a few days after. She's like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I actually ran into her after, and she said, that was amazing. She's like, I don't know if that's placebo or what. She's like, that's some magical stuff. And she said, I don't even think that a pill could even do what that did. She said she felt like herself, and she just was so thankful and so grateful. And she asked me to make her more. I said, absolutely. And then I ran into her husband a few days later, and he's like, well, good for you
so much.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know what you put in there, but he said she's feeling great.
Yeah, he was probably quite grateful, I'm sure.
Damiana is also an aphrodisiac as well. So yeah,
I'll use a little more of that, right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
You've brought up St. John's wort a few times, and before we sign off, I would like to ask you, is there a particular protocol you recommend for St. John's wort? Is it something where you take for a particular period of time and take a little bit of a break? What would your personal protocol with that be?
Well, first of all, if you are taking any sort of prescription medication, it can actually cause those like any prescription medication, it can cause some complications with that. So it can actually prevent your prescription medication from actually working.
Right.
So that's something to consider. And if that's the case, then I would, if it's prescription medication that you absolutely cannot stop taking, then I would take passion flower instead, skullcap lemon balm, or even Damiana.
Okay. And for people who aren't on prescription medication, how would they blend this into their protocol?
So you could take it just even like a teaspoon or tablespoon, depending on my day. I kind of, sometimes I'll put a little bit more in there, but I can take it for, 2 days, and then I will feel like I'll start to feel and notice a huge difference.
Okay.
And it also might cause you to be a little more sensitive to the sun as well. So that's something to pay attention to as well.
Okay.
But other than that, I love St. John's wort, or you can even put it in capsules as well if you don't want to do the tea. Or, but I've got some great flavors that I've been able to finally master after many trials.
Your tea tastes really good, and I am a person that I don't mind earthy teas. In fact, yeah, I kind of like them. But for people who, if that's not their cup of tea, you do have a very acute ability to make something that might not taste so, I guess, pleasing for the majority of people, very palatable. Like all of your teas taste so delicious, almost like a fruity floral flavor. I think it's the morning one that I have with the orange in it tastes so good. Like it's lovely. You're very talented in making things taste good.
Took a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to try more of what you're coming out with. And yeah, if you do have any new blends, let me know. I'm really keen to try them out. And for anyone else, I'd highly recommend getting in touch with Amy, either for the blends that she has created. They're all amazing. And if there's something specific, then get in touch with her to do a personal blend. And I think I might get you to create one for me too. And yeah, that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate your time and I love this conversation. I mean, I love getting to know you more. I know more about you now, than we did before. So your story was so beautiful, and as are you. And I'm just, yeah, so excited to get to share this with my friends and family, and really just educate people on the possibilities of how they can empower themselves through knowledge, education, and just taking personal responsibility for our health and our lives.
Yeah,
So
thank you so much, Melissa. I love that. I love what you're creating here.
we'll see what it turns into. It's been such an inspiration to me. I've already told you that a million times. So yeah, you're always such an inspiration to me, Amy.
Oh, thank you. I love you so much.
Same, absolutely. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.